The Sacramento Kings have fired Luke Walton after a 6-11 start. And you know what? I'm going to take responsibility here. I think I jinxed the Sacramento Kings. There's a past live stream I did where I said, the Kings are off to a good start. They're 5-5. Luke Walton loves the way they're playing right now. Well, ever since then, they've won one game, and I'm not even joking. They've lost 7 out of their last 8. And Luke Walton's record was 68-93 in 2+ seasons as the Kings coach. It's weird because I think he was hired in 2019, but it feels like he's been there a lot longer. Do you have any thoughts? And what was your reaction when you saw, Woj and Shams tweet out that he was fired?
I mean, it's about time, right? I mean, it's about dang time. I think, well, it's true though. See, I don't really know. I never really got why they went after Luke Walton. It seemed like a complete bad idea from the beginning. If you remember, like in 2018, 2019, that was the year they had Dave Yeager as the coach, and they got the 9.
I like Dave Yeager, by the way.
Yeah, and they had the 9 seed at All-Star break. They were right there for the 8 seed with like the Clippers and the Lakers. They still ended 9th. They had their best season in like forever, right? And then out of the blue, they just decided to fire him the day after their season ended. I remember this because I remember looking at my phone. I'm like, what? And I was like confused. And then they get Luke Walton, who just got completely slandered for being the Lakers coach and all that stuff and how they had a disappointing season. Like when LeBron said, oh, it's playoff mode time, and then they didn't make the playoffs. And everyone was talking about Luke Walton and how like, oh, he needs to go. So then you pick him up. It's almost like you're picking up like, I don't know if I should say this on here, but sloppy seconds.
Don't get canceled. No, just kidding.
Yeah. So, but that's what it seemed like. And it seemed inevitable that it was going to happen sooner or later. I just think it was. I think like Tristan Thompson came out and said something like, I don't need no like freaking coach.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you saw that. He was pissed.
And then I don't know if you saw De'Aaron Fox just the other day. I think it might have been after the most recent game. He said like they were asking questions or something about how like his connection with Luke Walton or whatever. And it's like, what does he need to do better? And then he kind of just like didn't address like, oh, he needs to do something better because like
he kind of like avoided the question. Would you say?
Yeah, like nobody's gonna just sit up here and like slander someone in their organization. But he's like, we all need to do our job, and he's like, we all know what's expected of us,
which he's not wrong about. But I get what you're saying.
And even he hasn't had a great season. But
I
think you could kind of get from that response. Like he looked irritated too. Like they asked him something else about like, is there a lot of pressure going on or something? He's like, I mean, it's not like we're in the playoffs. And I'm like, yeah, and you won't be again this year. And you haven't been in like a decade and a half. So I don't know. It just seemed like a toxic thing that's finally come to an end. It didn't make sense when it happened, in my opinion. And didn't make sense that it even lasted for almost 3 years. And it's going to be interesting to see who the replacement is because we know the Sacramento Kings. It's like when anything looks like it's going good for them, then it seems like it only goes worse.
See, I feel really bad for the Sacramento Kings, and I'm not just saying that. Like, I mean, you mentioned it, the 15, possibly 16-year drought of the not going to the playoffs. And
not possibly, it will be.
I joked about this. I said, you guys think the Suns' drought was bad, and don't get me wrong, it was, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, it could be a lot worse. Like
honestly, as much as the Minnesota Timberwolves want to hate on Jimmy Butler, like they better be thanking him that
they made the playoffs, right?
They made it the 1 year when they were the Timberwolves.
Yeah, exactly.
And they made it that year. But if they didn't, like they would have had the longest streak, and it still would have been going. So they better be thanking him just for that.
Exactly. And I think they low-key should have kept him. Anyways, but yeah, the Sacramento Kings. So another reason I feel bad is because Romp gives me a bunch of shit for this, but I am a coach's guy. I wonder if Luke Walton is maybe just a victim of like bad circumstances. And yeah, Lakers coach and LeBron and everything. But I'm like, I just wonder if maybe he's just had a lot of bad luck. I honestly think maybe one day he could be a good coach. Maybe he'll take a break from coaching and come back a better coach. And I wonder if the Sacramento Kings team, who, by the way, I think it was confirmed today that it is Alvin Gentry, former Suns coach, by the way, who is going to take over. Maybe this is very optimistic here. I'm optimistic, Suns geek today. Maybe we'll see now I'm not saying the Kings are going to make the playoffs. They probably won't, which sucks. But I wonder if we'll maybe see a Nate McMillan situation, where Lloyd Pierce was fired. The team clearly was not listening to Lloyd Pierce. And then, Nate McMillan takes over and they make the playoffs and went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, that's not going to happen with the Kings. If it did, this would be like NBA 2K or something. But just saying, maybe Alvin Gentry's that voice. Maybe they'll win a few games. They probably won't make the playoffs. Do you see that happening at all? Maybe.
I mean, I don't know how you're gonna react to this because I don't know what you think of him. I don't know how your chat's gonna react to this. But I've never been high on Alvin Gentry as a coach. I really don't think that he's that guy necessarily, and he hasn't really had
too much success
as the top guy. I think the last time it was when Kobe was going against you guys in the conference finals, and then he gave him a pat on the butt. So after he hit that shot, but ever since then, it just seems like a lot of disappointment with him as the head coach. Seems like I don't know if it's necessarily like a chemistry problem with him too, from what I've seen, but it just doesn't feel like the players that I've witnessed have ever really gotten much behind him, in the past decade or so. And yeah, you could say oh, well, he's gotten here before, but I mean, there comes a point where you got to use recency bias. Yeah. If it's just this season or something like that, or last season, then yeah, that makes sense. It's too recent, but 10 years, I think that's quite a bit of time.
Yeah. And first off, Alvin Gentry is a very nice guy. He's got family in Arizona and friends, and pre-COVID, he actually used to kind of stick around after games and hang out with his family and all that. And I actually got a chance to meet him once. But you are right. I don't really I don't have his record in front of me, but I don't really know how successful he's been in the league. But give him props. I mean, he's bounced around and been on a lot of teams and got years of experience. And I did kind of want to talk to you about this too, and Amanda brings this up. The Kings have some good players, but it's just something, or I can't read, but it's just missing something to make them that much better. I did want to talk to you about that. I have it in my notes here. And obviously, we both don't have all the answers right now. I wouldn't want to be Vlade and the GMs and the owners right now of the Kings because they don't have all the answers either. In your opinion, what's it going to take for this Kings team to not really turn it around, but just do something to be relevant again and get some wins and give Kings fans, which, by the way, shout out to the real Sacramento Kings fans, the fans that are there every game and watching. What do the Kings need to do? Is it a Buddy Hield trade? Is it trading away all your draft picks to get some veterans in here? What do the Kings need to do? I mean, Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, what's his name? Davion Mitchell, and a few other. Harrison Barnes has been playing pretty good. What do the Kings need to do, man?
Well, first of all, I will kind of agree with you on there, about the shout out to Kings fans, because being in California, do you know how easy it would be, the bandwagon? I mean, you see, well, first of all, the Lakers are the Lakers. They're iconic. And then, the Warriors, this guy Steph Curry comes along and Klay Thompson.
Who's that?
And then the Clippers come along. Now they're more relevant than ever, really. So
they've been great the last few years. I don't care what their finals and playoff record says.
And the Kings, they're just kind of the little brother. I even saw a TikTok of this about they're the little brother of the Pacific Division, someone said, and put that into acting. So props to them for still being Kings fans. I think they have the players that first of all, I think that a guy Richaun Holmes is probably the most underrated player in the whole NBA.
He's been great this season. Former Phoenix Sun, by the way.
He reminds me a lot of Montrezl Harrell, except I mean he can even probably stretch the floor a little better, and I think he plays a little bit better defense more consistently. Now, I'm not saying he's necessarily better than him or anything like that, but I just think that those are probably the things that he even has an edge on him for. So I think
Rashawn
that,
Holmes plays hard, and I can vouch for that as a Suns fan.
But I mean, like you mentioned, they got Barnes, they got Fox. I think Fox has kind of taken a step back so far this year.
I forgot to mention De'Aaron Fox earlier. Sorry.
He's gonna have to step up his game, and I think guys like Tyrese Halliburton, Davion Mitchell, Buddy Hield. I mean, there's gonna have to come a time where you decide. Like you can't. I don't see any way where they could be successful where you keep all three of those guys. And I think that kind of probably leans toward what you were saying, a Buddy Hield trade. I mean, This guy is the oldest of the three, and I get he's done great things for them. He's probably a fan favorite.
He's been pretty good this season too, considering.
And he was probably their best player, or at least like I think he averaged 20 points a game the year that they were close-ish to the playoffs. So that probably gives the current Kings fans like a little bit more feeling toward him, kind of like how the Warriors were with like Monte Ellis before Steph Curry, for example. So I think that, it'll be tough, but at the end of the day, if you want to start winning, you got to make tough decisions. And I pulled up actually Alvin Gentry's like coaching career, and he's actually made the playoffs 3 times, and he's been fired just as many times.
Oof.
Actually, he might have been fired a 4th time. Yeah, he was fired 4 times. It's just that it shows like the in-between one. So he's been fired more than playoff series or playoff appearances that he's had. So I don't know if that's necessarily the answer for the Kings, who I saw another stat today. The last 15 years, they made 0 playoff appearances, yet they've had 10 different coaches. So
and I do believe, coaches can have a big effect on the game, but at the same time, there's players out there playing. So you got to wonder if it's maybe the roster and how it's being built and trades and free agency. And
I think like over the past 10 years or so, though, like almost every team in the NBA, you can kind of like pinpoint like, oh, he was their key coach over this time. But I don't think you can do that with the Sacramento Kings.
Thank you.
There's too many guys. Like, okay, was he the best coach? Or like, I think Mike Malone was there, and like Tyrone Corbin and Keith Smart. But like, dude, nobody remembers these guys. Nobody's gonna remember Dave Yeager, Luke Walton in years from now. Like, it's not memorable at all.
I'm sorry to cut you off. That's what I wanted to say. And again, I sound like a complete coaches guy. Like I might be a little biased towards the coaches, but I'm like, when does it stop being, oh, we're just having a huge coaching problem, that's why we haven't been to the playoffs in 15, 16 years? Like, it's the players, man. It's whoever's running management and making these roster decisions. Like, and I'm not defending Luke Walton. Maybe if I was on the Kings team, I'd be like, yeah, fire him. I don't care. Like, but like, how many coaches do you need? And the Suns had this problem, man. Like, before Monty Williams, we were changing out coaches and I'm sure the Timberwolves too had that problem. It's like, it just frustrates me, and I wish we could literally fast forward through time and just see where the Kings are at, because it's like, you're right. Who's going to be that coach, and how long are they? Because Luke Walton was there 3 years, but like it felt like 5. And I'm kind of a Dave Yeager defender. I felt like he did a really great job, but you're right. Like, no one's going to remember him. They're going to remember Rick Adelman, who actually led them to the playoffs and is a Hall of Fame coach and all that. And if you're a Sacramento Kings fan watching this, and you're a real Sacramento Kings fan, shout out to you. That's my Kings rant. I had to get that off my chest. I legit feel bad for the Sacramento Kings right now.
I still think that the biggest mistake they could have made recently, well, I mean, there's a lot that we could talk about, like what happened.
Starting 5-5 and then winning 1 game after that.
Yeah, like you could talk about like them letting go of Isaiah Thomas and like the Rudy Gay issue, but I think the biggest thing, and it's probably the most obvious one, was, and it was a bad trade really for both ends, it turned out to be, but trading away Demarcus Cousins. Because when they did
I had that in the back of my head. I was thinking that.
Well, when they did that, it's like, first of all, it just was awkward as can be. Because remember, he found out at the All-Star game. Like, dude,
I
I'm just
remember
enjoying
that.
I'm enjoying my weekend, and then like my guy has to come over here and tell me, oh, you just got traded from the team you've been with for 7 years, like
the team that drafted you. I'd be pissed.
He grew up there and stuff. But I think that it didn't make sense because we all know like what's happened with Demarcus since. Like the next year had a fluke Achilles injury, and seems like everything's been going downhill since. Although he still should be on an NBA team, I don't know why he isn't.
I know. I'm like, why isn't he? This guy's an all-star.
I would gladly take him over Tony Bradley on my Chicago Bulls.
I would
know how I feel about Tony Bradley.
Yep.
But anyways, like I think that not only that, but even with the Kings, like if you would have kept DeMarcus Cousins, first of all, the Achilles thing again was a fluke, so it probably doesn't happen. Then, I mean, that year it looked like he was going to bring him to the playoffs, or he had him, I think, in the 8th seed for most of the season up to that point.
There was one year where they actually were playing pretty damn good basketball. I don't know if they were a playoff team, but they were pretty damn good.
It looked like they were finally breaking through that year, and it was like, okay, if they're not going to make it this year, then the next year, the year after. And he had just committed, I think, to him, and they had committed to him. I remember Divock said like, oh, like we're not gonna trade him, and then a week later it's like, all right, you're gone. So I don't get why that happened. Didn't really make sense. And now it seems like it's kind of karma biting him in the butt for getting rid of someone who actually wanted to stay loyal and be a loyal star for them, and the best player they've really had over the past decade too. So I don't know why they did that.
And shout out to the Clippers who gave him a chance last year. And again, he should still be in the league. And away from DeMarcus Cousins real quick, John says Rashawn really is up there for most underrated players in the league.
Correct.
Just continued to get better with a bigger role in Sacramento. Exactly. If I'm correct, he's averaging a double-double. I don't know if he is, but he was close to that. He's been playing very good for them.
I think he's at a 14-9 because I was checking today. I made a thread on Twitter with like who I think has been the best player on each team so far this year.
I gotta check that out, by the way.
And I put him on there, but I was thinking either him or Harrison Barnes probably. But
yeah,
I think so far he's probably been their best player on the team. He's actually, I just pulled it up, 14.2 points per game, and he's at 9.9 rebounds a game. So basically a double-double.
And look, I forget what his numbers were with the Suns, but this was a guy that played hard. He had effort. And this was back, when we were a 19-win team, and he was behind DeAndre Ayton most games. And this guy played hard and showed effort, and he put up the numbers. I think this season he had like a 20-20 game, if I remember correctly. He's been playing hard.
He's currently second in true shooting percentage in the league, behind only Rudy Gobert. So